auto workers were set to expand their strike to additional production lines across the country. The walkout, which began 2 weeks ago, is hitting the Detroit 3 automakers, GM, Ford, and Stellantis. Our correspondent Aya Ibrahim is at one of those walkout sites, a Ford production center near Detroit in Wayne, Michigan.
That's right, Stephen. Where I'm standing right now, you see Ford workers entering their third week of strike against the three big automakers. These are Ford workers, but as you mentioned, there are strikes for GM and Stellantis as well. I've spent a couple of days here at the picket line and really trying to understand what motivates the workers here and why they're determined to continue with their strike. Let's take a look at what they had to say in this report.
For almost half of Jeff Jolly's life, mornings have looked like this. Getting ready for a job that for a long time helped him raise 2 children and buy a house. His own slice of the American dream. Today, the assembly line worker is on his way to work the picket line.
Before, it meant you could come out of high school and make middle-class wages and bring your family up, and I think corporate greed's overpowering, the regular people out trying to just live. Need to come up to a standard of living that we used to have.
He's talking about what conditions were like up until the 2008 financial crisis. Back then, workers at Ford, GM, and Stellantis gave up benefits to cut costs and save their companies from collapse. Workers hired after the financial crisis make less. Now that profits and CEO income at the Big Three are at a record high, the workers are also demanding their share. They want better pay, similar wages for newer employees and older ones, pensions, job security, and health care.
I would like to see these young people get their pension. One of the things we are fighting for is a pension for the new hires over the last 10 or so years. And nobody should be in that factory or any factory for 30 years and come out without a pension.
We deserve better. I mean, we have gotten things taken away from us for 13 plus years. We deserve it all back now that we're finally making record profits.
These retirees that's here, people who have been here and putting their life on the line, their blood, sweat, and tears for us, for the future generation to come into this job.
No money, no peace. No money, no peace.
It's getting cold out here on the picket line, and so some workers have set up campfires to keep themselves warm. They tell me they are determined to stay for as long as it takes until they get a fair deal. But the longer this goes on for, the more difficult it's going to be for them to survive and make ends meet.
While on strike, workers get $500 a week from the union. That's about half of what they normally earn, which was barely enough to cover the basics. Michelle, a single mother to a 14-year-old boy, is feeling the pressure.
You have to watch your checking account, you have to watch your savings account, you have to watch your credit cards, because you can't just go to the grocery store and buy your normal groceries. You have to look. So my son will say to me, what are we having for dinner tonight? And I'm like, well, I have this much here and this much here. It's ramen and hot dogs, or maybe I can spring for roasted chicken and some potatoes. It just depends. So it's good, but at the same time, it's nerve-wracking as a mom, right? I'm like, I got to get through it.
Voices like Michelle's are resonating across the country, with surveys showing a majority of Americans support unions. The powerful are taking note. In just 1 week, both President Joe Biden and former President and Republican hopeful Donald Trump came here to meet workers, taking their fight to win over working-class voters to Detroit. The United Auto Workers Union has yet to endorse a candidate for the 2024 U.S. presidential race.
I don't necessarily know if they actually support it or they're just looking to garner votes, but it does put a spotlight on what's going on out here, so I appreciate that.
For now, Jeff wants the focus to be solidarity and the hope that his granddaughter's generation could have a chance at achieving their version of the American dream, right here in Michigan.
Something that really stayed with me, Stephen, covering the story and being here on the picket line, something that workers kept saying to me again and again is that even though this strike is about individual demands, whether it has to do with payment or working conditions, to them, this is also about inequality in this country. A lot of the people that work here are making as little as $16 a day. They can't afford many of the cars that they are making. Meanwhile, they're looking at their CEOs making a record income of about over 20 million for the Ford CEO. And so they really emphasized that this is about much bigger than just the strike, and they want to see change from their management.
Aya, briefly, what are car makers saying about their workers' demands? How is their response?
Well, the argument of the automaker captains, bosses, is that there has to be a balance between what workers want and their company staying competitive. I mean, there are now competition from all over the world for people that want to buy cars. But looking at the negotiations more concretely, Ford is the one automaker where there has been substantial progress. That's according to the UAW. The other two are a little bit more difficult according to the union. But we really have to put this into context that the union is asking for an almost 40% increase in pay. What the other GM and Stellantis are offering is something close to 20%. And so there's of course a huge gap between the demands of the workers and the automakers.
All right, Aya Ibrahim in Wayne, Michigan, talking about those auto worker strikes. Thank you.